Okay, without further ado, I'll introduce tonight's speaker. Backed by popular demand, Dr. Jeffrey Dyer is a licensed clinical family and marriage therapist. He's trained as a pastor and a psychotherapist. He holds degrees from DePaul and Northwestern Universities, the Lutheran School of Theology at Chicago, and Fuller Theological Seminary. Dr. Dyer is a clinical member of two prestigious professional associations for mental health professionals, the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy and the American Association of Pastoral Councils. He is on the staff of Linden Oaks Hospital in Naperville, and he serves as a family mediator in judicial matters of custody and joint parenting agreements. As clinical director of Associates in Pastoral Psychotherapy, Dr. Dyer maintains a busy private practice. He regularly lectures in churches, community agencies, and serves as an adjunct professor at various colleges. Let's welcome Dr. Jeffrey Dyer.
There we go. Well, good evening. Have any of you ever heard me do my thing before? How many have ever been to one of my lectures? Okay, good. I'm glad that you came back. And tonight, what we're going to do is talk about something that constantly comes up to me on a regular basis, and this is the question: how do I build a good relationship? How do I find somebody that can really be the kind of person with whom I can build a solid relationship and have a rewarding life with? Have most of you asked that question at one time or another? Yes. You've never said something like, all men are bad. How do I find a good one, right? The thing about relationships is they are very, very, we can't swear. They're very, very difficult. At every stage of the game, relationships are tough. And I'm telling a very, very true story. There's a couple, they're Swedish Lutherans, and all of their life, they kept fighting and bickering, not getting along. And everybody, even their kids, recommended that they get a divorce. Just forget it. It doesn't work. And so one night after another long, dragged out, terrible conflict, in bed, the wife said to the husband, "You know, Ole, I think that tonight we need to pray. Pray like we've never prayed before. We need to pray that God will take one of us home, and then I can go and live with my sister." Relationships are difficult at every stage of the game. And in fact, people who like to play with statistics and that tell us that relationships are more complicated, more complex, more challenging than the systems that put people on the moon. That's a fact. Relationships are that difficult, especially the kinds of relationships between men and women, husbands and wives, people who love one another, and people who try to build a life together. And I'd like to share with you tonight a little bit about what are some of the ways that we can know when we have a good relationship, and what are some of the ways that we can identify that a relationship may not be so good, and that we should go at it with our own risk. We have nobody to blame but ourselves. Let's talk about relationships. You know, in every relationship, there are three obvious things going on. First, there is the other person. All that that person brings to that relationship. He or she brings a set of relationships with parents, brothers, sisters, life experiences, a biological as well as psychological set of thoughts. And so it's highly complex. They bring a lot to a relationship. So that's the first part. The second is you bring to a relationship all that you are. Your whole life, your mother and father, your experiences, your past, your unique set of things that define you to be who you are. And then the third obvious thing in a relationship has to do with the combination of these two people. Have you ever known a couple people that they're just great as long as they're not together? And that's no joke. People, and I see this every day in my practice. I meet husbands and wives, and I will think, these people are really nice, but put them together, and it's something really strange, awful. Somehow these people actually change, because how people connect, how they relate, how they interact has a lot to do with how they are in relational context. And so, we call relational blend two people in association. And there are various degrees of connectedness and lacks of connectedness. And I'd like to tell you something tonight that I'm sure you've heard before, but I'd like to underscore this. If there's anybody in here who would like to build a business with me, I'd like to go into business with you. I could use the money, and I suspect some of you could. And here's what I'd like to do. I would like us to find a way to change people who don't want to change. I want to put a neon sign in front of my office in Downers Grove that says, look, we change people who don't want to change. And I think they'd be lined up from my office to the Hancock building. And you know why that wouldn't work? Because, and many people don't believe this, but it's the truth. Know it, believe it, don't forget it. You can't change anybody. Even changing ourselves is quite a challenge. But we can't change anybody. And yet, I'll be honest, I make a whole living meeting people who believe they can change somebody. There was a woman who called, this is the honest truth, a few weeks ago. She said, Dr. Dyer, I'd like you to return my call. I called her back. And she said, I've got some problems. I need to see you. And I have to change the language a little bit. She said, I said, what's the problem? She said, it's my husband. He's a hopeless jerk. And you see, that's really the attitude. If only she would change, things could be better. If only he would change, things would be better. Let me tell you what could make our marriage go. What John needs to do is, or what Mary needs to do, and the like. Please know that you are not going to change anybody. So what you need to do is focus on changing you. Because when we change ourselves, that interconnectedness, a relationship changes, doesn't it? Not because we're wrong and the other person's right, not because we've messed up, but because when we're different, the other person responds differently. The dynamics of the relationship are different. Do you agree? Most people get into this difficulty all the time. It's not me who should change, it's him or her. But that's not going to happen. You change, and the relationship will change. Now, Adrian, I've been over all this stuff, and you even typed up some good notes. So you're going to hear a lot of what you've already heard, but they asked me to do the same talk. What can I do? Here are some common mistakes in the beginning of relationships. Please understand these. First of all, we don't ask enough questions about the other person. Now, there's nothing romantic about Columbo. There's no doubt about it. But we need to be asking questions to get to know someone. Very often, a reason we don't ask questions is we don't want them to know who we are, because we've got stuff to hide. And we're scared, if the person seems good, that we might find out something we don't like, and now we may have to rethink the relationship. And good guys and good gals are hard to find. So we don't ask enough questions. And I'm going to get in a little bit later some of the kinds of things we need to learn about somebody. Also, we ignore potential problems of relationships. One of the things I do every time when I work with folks is I will ask, before you were married, did you know some of these things? Oh yeah, but I thought that once we got married, things would be different. Things would change. And so we ignore signs of potential problems. We minimize their importance. Well, you know, he didn't really drink that much. There are 2 or 3 every night, that's all. And on the weekends, you know, he's generally checked out. But it wasn't really that bad. He drank a lot, only beer. No, I'm not joking. Every single thing I tell you tonight is out of my files. The names have been changed to protect the innocent and the guilty alike. Then we make excuses for other people. We will say, well, wait a minute, you know, she's overly jealous and possessive and all that, but her ex-husband cheated on her and made her really insecure. She doesn't mean to act that way. And when she has a good relationship with somebody who's loving and faithful like I am, all that behavior will stop. Wrong. Then also, we will rationalize. You know, as we were going together, he never seemed to work, and he always seemed to have a good reason why. If you had been through what he'd been through, you would have had difficulty getting a job too. One of the reasons he continues to work is he's trying to finish and polish his resume. He's trying to get everything just right. You think I'm kidding as I say this stuff. It's no joke. People deny. What do you mean? You think that he doesn't treat me well? He's wonderful to me. Nobody's ever loved me the way that he loves me or she loves me. But nobody else sees it. It's you and me against the world. Forget it. If your community and the people you know think the relationship is stupid, it probably is. Take it to the bank. Now, here are some warning signs. Here are some problems that seem to come up on a regular basis. These are things to look for. Does it mean that tomorrow night at a nice date you're going to say, wait, there's something wrong with you because Dr. Dyer told us that if you couldn't answer this question, well, there's something wrong. There probably is, but don't assume that. For example, a person who refuses to discuss his or her past in any depth. When the person is 50 years old and sounds like they've had a life of an 18 or 19-year-old, something's missing. And so many people don't want to discuss their past. They may not understand it very well. They may be ashamed of it. They also may have been very, very effective in revising their past. You need to talk with them about this. And so that's a thing to look for, is somebody who's willing to be open about the past. Another issue that you need to look at, again, we're talking about asking questions. You'd like to know about the details of a person's family background. There are people who seem like they just appeared one day. They didn't. And you just don't get much insight. What was your mother like? Oh, she made a lot of cookies. And she always drove me and my brother to baseball. It was real nice. She's a nice lady. She really loved us. Something's missing. What was your father like? Well, he worked a lot, knocked himself out for us kids, made a lot of sacrifices. And which movie did you want to see? There's just not much information. There's no sense of things. And then still, where you're in frequent contact with this person, you'll notice that the person has a lot of negative attitudes towards everybody. Believe me, you're on the list. It's going to come to you. I do everything well in my life except relationships. Let me tell you about my boss. Let me tell you about my ex-wife. Let me tell you about my son. Let me tell you about my ex-daughter-in-law. And it's just conflict after conflict. Nothing works. You think you're going to work it out with that individual? The person doesn't have an experience of relationships working out. We are so arrogant. We really think that we can change others. That by her knowing me, she'll find the one relationship, the one person who really understands. My love for her will change her. Only in Manna La Mancha, not in genuine life experience.